Welcome to TSM Doubtbox, Question of the Week number 9. Today we cover part 2 of Caleb's question about prayer. Last time I answered the question, did Jesus really tell his disciples not to pray in public? So if you're interested in that, check that out as well. Well, this week I'll cover the other half of the question, which is, should Christians push back against a government attempts at censoring prayer in public? Well, I typically don't cover political questions in this forum. My focus is related to Christianity, the Bible, our values, beliefs, and doubts and struggles that we might all have. But increasingly, political questions have been making their way into our everyday lives, so I thought I would tackle this question. My initial response is, well, what do you mean by government censoring prayer in public? I mean, we can pray in public if you want. You can pray by yourself, you can pray with other people, you can pray at school, you can pray at work, at graduations, on the street corner. It doesn't matter. There's no law against it. Just don't pray in the middle of math class, at least out loud, and don't lead prayer in the middle of the drive-thru at Chick-fil-A. That would be rude. So there's no laws against praying in public, as long as you're not disruptive of others or trying to force other people to pray with you. So go ahead. No one's going to censor you. But I don't think that's really the question that Caleb was asking. I think it was more related towards prayer in school, in the classrooms, over the PA system, at graduations or sports ball events. Well, in these cases, that's not legal in this country. But it used to be. A little bit of history for you. The U.S. was founded on a strong belief in God by a culture that was predominantly Christian. Founding Father John Adams said, "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate for the government of any other kind." Boy, was he right about that. George Washington stated, "What students would learn in American schools is above all the religion of Jesus Christ." And so for the first 100 years, it was very common to not only have prayer in school, but that was the focus of education. Harvard, the very first university, was founded in 1636 by Christians for the purpose of training Christian pastors. And the next 100 or so universities made were all explicitly Christian because the culture was Christian. By the late 1800s, the culture had shifted towards a more secular view, and by the 1960s, less than 40% of states allowed prayer in school. In 1962, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that school officials could not lead school children, in public schools at least, in prayer, even if it was voluntary. Was this a good decision or a bad one? Well, that's the tough thing about politics, as opposed to biblical questions. There's no solid standard as a reference. So, as I read through the Supreme Court decision, I found myself agreeing with some of the points for and against the decision. I think the biggest obstacle, though, to topics like should there be prayer in school, is that our culture is no longer predominantly Christian. Based on the most recent surveys, while 70% of Americans will call themselves Christians, only 75% of those believe that God even exists. And only a third actually go to church or read their Bible on a regular basis. Only 30% believe in objective right or wrong. So this is not the type of culture that would reasonably support any sort of prayer, much less one that you or I would be comfortable with being recited in the public school. So personally, I think I'd rather have public schools focus on the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, and leave it to the families to train the children in their faith through Bible studies and prayer. And if you want a more explicit Christian education, well, there's homeschooling or there's private schools. But hey, this is politics, and if you think differently than me, that's just fine. You can change the laws. You can change the Constitution. But I think more important than that, though, is spending time changing hearts. And you do that by sharing the gospel with everyone you can, by being a disciple who makes disciples. You can change the world through doing this, and that will help shift the culture from one or to one that prays, regardless of what the laws say. So I hope that answers your question. Mr. Perry out.